Rot in a Porcelain Dream is a 2.5D platformer inspired by the Souls-like series, where you have tag and assist combat all in a dark fantasy world. Let's talk about that. Rot in a Porcelain Dream, where did the name come from?
Pretty much from the game's lore. I had a whole list of titles, probably we had 100 of them, just different variations of different stuff. It was one of the weirder ones, but I really liked it because it's weird and it kind of fits with the theme of the game, and we just kind of ran with it.
And this is your guys' first game, right?
Our first fun game. Two of us used to work in the sim industry, the military sim industry.
Yeah.
So we did games like jet trainers and combat training and stuff like that.
So kind of your first game as a team together. How big is your team?
Right now we're 3 people.
And you've been working on this for a year now or so? Or?
So I worked on it by myself for a year and a half, 2 years, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, just experimenting and stuff. And then I asked my friend Mike, who's an artist, who's the main artist of the game, if he was interested. And then he started working part-time a little bit, just on the side, and then we just went full-time with it. And then we picked up his younger brother a few years ago to help out.
Obviously you started this game solo and then you brought people on, so maybe it changed a ton, but kind of how much did, from when you first thought about the game to now, how much did that vision change and kind of the whole story and everything else behind it change?
Story-wise, right now, actually, I kind of wrote the base story on my own, kind of as we were going through, we're okay, we had the world set up, and then we started making characters in it and stuff, so we kind of knew all the characters. We actually just ended up cutting a bunch just because of, time constraints. Okay. But right now, we sent it off to a writer to clean it up, because I'm not a writer, so he's a lot of it's going to change, I'm sure.
Okay.
And the dialogue is going to be written and stuff like that, but from the beginning it hasn't really changed much. Gameplay wise, I'd say the first few prototypes we had were definitely nowhere near what we have now, but the vision that we have now is closer to what we wanted in the end. Visually, it's completely changed just because we figured out what we're doing. We had a lot of learning to do.
When you say you're sending it off to a writer, does that mean kind of your whole story behind the game is really kind of in flux at this point?
It's not really in flux. It's more the skeleton of it. We have all the characters are made, their personalities and stuff are the way we like them and stuff like that. It's just all the dialogue entries and little plot holes and stuff need to be filled and just more professionally done. So he's giving it a good coat of paint.
Talk to me about the game world. You said you could have your friend come on as the artist. The art on the game looks awesome. So kind of walk me through.
Thank you.
Yeah, just walk through the game itself, kind of from beginning to end, the different environments you're going to see, stuff like that.
Most of our development, pretty much 5 years of it, has been sandboxed, where it's just combat. Because our mechanics are, I like to call it Marvel versus Trine Souls. So it's 3 tag team fighting game where we have tags, assists, ultras, combos and stuff. And then you kind of add a little bit of the heavy, slow Dark Souls kind of combat to it. We have stuff hit canceling. It's a big part of our game. On any successful hit, you can dash and it'll stop time a little bit and you can get out of it. So you can make it much faster the better you get. So as you get more acclimated to the characters, it speeds up a lot. So I think that's actually a fun mechanic that people will figure out as they play. And that's kind of our mechanics, where it's a side scroller where we wanted it to feel every time you run into one of the higher enemies, it feels you're one-on-oneing somebody in a fighting game. And then the lower trash mobs are kind of you can just style on them and juggle them to death if you feel like it. But each one of the characters has their own fighting game moveset, and they have their own assists that come in, if you can call them, depending on the move, every so many seconds. And then they have an ultra meter with ultra bar and stuff like that. It took a lot of time to get that, because we basically made a fighting game. So we had to do that first in a sandbox environment, and then we had to get it going in an action side scroller.
Well, let's just segue right into the characters then. There's 3 heroes you can play as within the story, correct?
Yeah, okay. You get them all at once though. So it's more of a team thing rather than use this character for this. We ran into that problem actually. You can do that, make one enemy, it's it's really weak to this character, but it's what if that character dies, because they don't share a health pool. So you can lose characters and revive them along the way. So it's more we have Red, which is actually a mid-size in this game, a mace warrior. The mace, it kind of transforms, kind of like Bloodborne, Monster Hunter style weapons where they open up and stuff. So his mace comes down, turns into a lance. He's like a mid-speed in this game, but if you play him coming from any other game, he feels kind of like on the, not the slower side, but like, you know, a heavier character. Then we have Ella, who's kind of like, I call her a rocket jump mage. Like she's a mage, but it's kind of very physical. Like she'll like just rocket jump off the ground with magic, and then she has like a Kuma fireball, so she'll like throw them to the ground, just like teleports to the floor. So like she's fast, you know, a lot of air movement, combos like that. And then we have Ricardo, who's like the heavy guy, but he's pretty mobile now, but he's slow. He kind of walks a line between living and dead, so he can kind of jump into the background for a bit and kind of like ghost behind people and stuff. And he hits really hard. You know, he's got the big heavy move set. It's kind of like a, you know, 3 different balances. So you can pick and choose whatever you want to use more. If you want to use one of them as assist, or you can jump in mid combo if you want to. Time actually stops when you tag, so you can throw in a character for a little bit and then tag out and throw in another character and stuff like that.
Can you swap weapon and armor and like things of that nature? Is that something in the game or no?
We have an inventory with armor and weapon slots, but we don't have like nothing's really visually going to change when you like, we don't have different weapons or different movesets, because each character right now has like around 200 animations just for each moveset. Like they're deep fighting game like movesets. They're not like just 2 swings. Weapons on top of that would have been too much for us. I don't think anyone's going to get bored of their movesets. They're pretty deep. There's a lot you can do with it. So we're going more of like power-ups and like gear that gives you stat increases or little additions like elemental stuff.
With the elemental things, and like, you know, you'd mentioned they all have like unique abilities and stuff like that. Can you rank that up in the game? Kind of how does that work?
We're kind of experimenting with it right now. The current plan is to have kind of like a maiden where you can level up your stats and stuff like that, like you know, HP. There's like iframes and all sorts of like little like tweaks that you can definitely do in code right now, but we haven't really made it. We haven't done any itemization yet, just because the levels are still a little blocked out. So we're waiting till everything's like kind of more finished, especially with the bosses, so we can see what's overpowered and what's not and stuff like that.
Going back to kind of the world itself, right? One of the things when I was looking through your game kit, I noticed there's something called beacons in the game. So can you kind of walk me through exactly what those are and how they impact the game world?
So there's actually 2 types of people in this world. We call them fragments and beacons.
Okay.
And the most basic way of saying it is beacons are like people with stronger spiritual energy. Their influence changes the world around them in a way. So you kind of think of it like a Venn diagram where you have like a boss that's just exerting all this influence over his land, and if he has a certain like aura to his presence, like trees might look different depending on who's there, or like you know, water might be different, stuff like it changes everything. Okay. And then they kind of like overlap with each other. So as those bosses get cleared out, certain things can change, and it just plays like that. One of the bosses, he has an effect on the world where it's like the entire area is deafened, where it's like it sounds like you're underwater basically, where everything like you can't hear things, and like all the colors are muted. Yeah. So like after you get rid of him, you know, the world kind of springs to life. You know, the textures change, the color palette changes, and you can actually like hear the noises again and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a lower reason for it, but stuff like things like that can happen. And then fragments are the people that are in that world, but they have the influence exerted on them. They don't have enough like power to. So it's just the 2 like, I guess, hierarchies. Yeah. So it's just a classification system really. Like all the bosses, for example, are beacons, and the main characters are also beacons.
Gotcha.
So.
You mentioned the fragments. So are those your equivalents, kind of like the NPCs you interact with in the game?
Not necessarily the ones you interact with. Some of the NPCs you interact with are beacons too, but it's just the like lower level mobs pretty much that inhabit the world, like enemies and friendly people alike. So
another question then, circling back to the game info itself, when I was looking through there, I noticed there's a town at kind of the center of the world, and like all these bridges kind of going off into the different levels. Is that kind of like your game hub between levels, kind of where
we do have teleporting between like shrines or, you know, bonfire kind of deal, but the bar is somewhere you always return to talk to the character that runs the bar, and he's kind of like your anchor. He kind of knows more about what's going on. He'll fill you in on stuff, and then you talk about like the characters will have dialogue there. Also, there'll be ghosts of the bosses. There's a lore reason for it, but you can also interact with them, get information. You can level up, you know, chat to NPCs, learn more about stuff, you know, and more things unlock every time you beat a level and stuff, but it's pretty much just like your chill area.
Gotcha. With NPCs, there's always the opportunity, I guess you could say, for side quests. Is that something in this game or no?
Yeah. So most of our NPCs, like we don't have too many of them. They're actually like custom made to stand out. One of them, for example, is is, we call him Upus. He's our vendor, and certain things happen depending on what the player does. And I'd have to show you a picture of him, but he starts out like a normal looking person. But if you trade him certain things, or you buy too much from him, or you don't, like, he starts corrupting and rotting, and then eventually he turns into this crazy looking guy. He's like giant.
Pull it up really quick.
Oh, you want me to pull it up now?
Yeah, why not? Let's see what he looks like.
So he'll start off like that,
Okay.
and there's a whole, like, you'll see him in a certain spot, like hiding, and then he'll get a little like bloodier and stuff happens to him, and then that's his like ending form. So we're trying to make like each NPC not just someone you talk to and like be like, okay, like, hey, go that way or something like that. They have like a whole thing behind them, and we have about like 5. They're like, you know, multiple models, like lots of stuff's going on. So they're not like minor characters.
They each kind of have like their own separate storyline you're gonna kind of see as the game goes on, basically.
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue into the next question. Can you kind of walk me through what you want the story to be exactly when it's finished, and kind of how it evolves and brings in the NPCs and all those different elements?
So, I mean, we have a lot of very custom, interesting, I think, at least bosses. So it all kind of revolves around the bosses and those 3 main characters. And the basic, if I had to just like give you a few second like pitch, it's that the world started to rot, and all the beacons like have a cause in it, and you're trying to figure out why and what's going on. And the 3 characters that you play are immune to all the craziness that's going around, and they don't know why.
With any action game, I think there's a lot of challenges with the development, right? Because you're trying to balance things, and you know, you can have a lot of bugs along the way. So with you guys, from beginning to end, what was the biggest difficulties in development?
Well, the worst part about everything is just that everything takes so long. But the most challenging thing, I think, is just getting the game to feel right. Because like, you go and you play all these like, you know, really good indie and AAA games where like the gameplay feels good, and then you go and like put in a new prototype in, and you're like, this doesn't feel right, and then you just have to like keep tweaking these little values. Like when somebody gets hit, like if you don't make them move back fast enough, it just feels slow and sluggish, and it's like, I can't believe that one little thing made such a big difference, but it does, and you have to sit there and do all the details, because otherwise it just doesn't feel right or look right.
Kind of what's your roadmap in 2022? What's kind of the plan moving forward?
We'd love to be finished soon. It's been a while. Right now we're on a boss rush, we call it. We're doing all the bosses, like animations. Well, they're all designed and modeled out and everything. So right now we're doing boss animations, encounters, AI, polishing, getting all that finished. And then I'll probably go around after that and do all the sound effects after. And then once we have those bosses in, we will have pretty much all the combat that's for the game. Like, we already have the NPCs, those smaller guys done and stuff like that. And then we're going to go full blast on the levels. Hopefully the writer will send us back the finished, like, copy of the script and everything. We'll shoot it out to, we're working with like awesome composers and like a voice acting studio. And we don't have a lot of voice acting. It's like a made up language.
Okay.
So that is just, I just like the sound of it better. Just like when it's not English, I guess. I like the Monster language and stuff.
When you say made up, do you mean like what Nintendo does?
No.
Okay.
It's actually Greek, but I've changed around the syllables, or not the vowels, and it sounds like a whole new language.
I know you said, you're kind of polishing a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on with it right now. Do you have an estimate you want to shoot for when it comes to a launch date at this point, or no?
We're trying to get all of it in by the end of the year. I don't know how long the polishing after that will take, but we're definitely coming around to finishing all the, at least the combat content. It'll just be level stuff after that, and I'm not sure how many cutscenes we're going to be able to do, but we do have some, like, not heavy cutscenes, but we have some smaller, like, I like to call it like vagrant story cutscenes. It's kind of up in the air how many of those we'll be able to do, but we're shooting to be done by the end of the year.
All right, there you have it. That is Rot in a Porcelain Dream. It is an incredible looking game. I cannot wait to play it. The combat looks awesome, if not challenging, and all of their social media is down below. Make sure you go check that out. But before you go, why not like, comment, and subscribe to this guy right here. I am Nick. This is the Side Quest, and I will see you all later. Take it easy.